Good morning, everyone, and thank you to Director Klein and our witnesses for being here today. Today, for the first time in 4 months, our colleagues across the aisle have gathered us here to discuss how the Biden administration needs to do more for offshore oil and gas. It appears that this may be part of a broader campaign today to distract from the current House Republican chaos and their failures to elect a speaker or have a coherent plan to fund the government. But regardless, let's get into this. Today, we'll hear that the Biden administration needs to sell more oil and gas leases to big oil off our coast to ensure, quote, energy security, unquote, and our economic futures. But let's be clear. Big oil does not need more handouts. Oil and gas companies already control 12 million acres of federal water in the Gulf of Mexico alone. Over 75% of the leases industry holds remain unused. And to my own disappointment, the administration plans to hold 3 more lease sales in the Gulf of Mexico over the next 3 years, locking us into decades of future development. But still, this is never enough. If we want to have any chance of staving off the worst impacts of the climate crisis, it is essential that we begin to phase out fossil fuel extraction from federal lands and waters. Right now, the United States is the largest producer and the largest exporter of oil and gas in the world. And despite how my colleagues from across the aisle may make it seem, production in the Gulf of Mexico is at an all-time high. Oil companies are raking in billions of dollars in record profits, and CEOs are giving themselves tens of millions of dollars in salaries and bonuses, all while decreasing fossil fuel worker pay and systematically laying off the workforce. Despite this record production, record CEO pay, and record profit, Americans are still at the whim of the global market when it comes to energy prices here at home. Today's hearing focuses on how the Biden administration should somehow give away more public resources to big oil, all while the Gulf region experiences simultaneous crises caused both directly and indirectly by offshore drilling and fossil fuel development. As we speak, Louisiana, one of the states typically with the highest rainfall in the country, is experiencing an unprecedented wildfire season. In August, over 550 fires in Louisiana burned more than 60,000 acres, forcing entire towns to flee the flames. Governor Edwards warned that this wildfire risk is, quote, the new normal for the state. Drought, subsidence, rising seas, and man-made changes to the river have led to historically low water levels in the Mississippi River and allowed salt water from the Gulf of Mexico to creep up into local water sources. Thousands of people are already suffering from water that is unsafe to drink. It is corroding infrastructure and leaching heavy metals into drinking water systems. Hundreds of thousands of people in New Orleans could be threatened. Of course, there are also the ever-threatening hurricanes caused by climate change and the loss of wetlands from oil and gas infrastructure, the very natural barriers that are supposed to protect coastal communities from storms. There is abandoned oil and gas infrastructure, thousands of miles of pipelines littering the seafloor, which, if oil and gas companies paid to fully reclaim, could employ thousands of oil and gas workers as we look to transition and clean up the Gulf waters, but are more often left on the seafloor to pollute. There are also the public health impacts, increased rates of asthma and diseases like cancer around fossil fuel infrastructure, which disproportionately harm communities of color and low-income Americans. Yet time and time again, we continue to see the failure to consider any of these impacts of offshore drilling. I implore my colleagues to recognize these impacts and, instead of asking for more drilling, have productive conversations about a managed decline of fossil fuels, a transition that puts workers, communities, and climate first so we don't make the same mistakes again as we shape a clean energy future. Offshore wind has enormous potential in the Gulf and across all our coasts to support family-sustaining union jobs and make our federal waters part of the climate solution rather than part of the problem. I look forward to our hearing from our witnesses, and I yield back.
Thank you.